I recently underwent surgery for pancreatic cancer. Although I'm not out of the woods and face 6 months of chemotherapy, the prognosis is more promising than not, so I return to this chamber hopeful and I'm glad to be back. During my time in the hospital and days of recovery since, I had time to reflect on all manner of things, and will take my counsel time this evening to share a few thoughts on 4 topics. This will only take 5 minutes. All right. The responsibilities of an elected official. How I have tried to honorably discharge those responsibilities. The role of zoning and granting rights to developers while providing protections to residents whose personal and property rights may be affected. And Heroes Bridge as a practical example, because it presents a number of issues, even before the application has been submitted, that I don't think the current public debate helps to resolve. I believe that the central word guiding our responsibilities as elected public officials here is elected. I remind myself often that the reason governing bodies have police powers to begin with, to establish speed limits, erect stop signs, adopt zoning regulations and site plan requirements, is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of their citizens. So it should be no surprise that the health, safety, and welfare of my constituents are my primary concerns. To that end, constituents elected me based on the vision I offered for our town. It was broadly shared in my word and evidenced by the election results. Some call this shared vision a special interest, but it's actually and literally a vision of the public interest and at the root of why so many residents, including a multitude from my ward, spoke out against the Amazon data center. These same citizens are applauding the staff's meticulous review of the site plan, but they're unhappy at the redactions. Now that, of course, I've heard from Councilman Hartman, understanding they don't know all the details, which keeps the facts away from the public, and now the staff. And I'm very happy with the way the staff has responded to the second submission. In keeping, guided by this vision and my understanding of representative government, and in keeping with what my residents expect of me, I have faithfully communicated them once a month by email, highlighting the issues before the council important to them. Now, turning now to zoning. A little history lesson. In 1926, in a case styled the Village of Euclid versus Ambler Realty, the United States Supreme Court confirmed that zoning could exclude certain uses as a reasonable exercise of the municipality's police power. This is the origin of the terms Euclidean zoning and exclusionary zoning. They wrote, no serious difference of opinion exists in respect to the validity of laws and regulations fixing the height of buildings within reasonable limits, the character, materials, and methods of construction, and the adjoining area which must be left open in order to minimize the danger of fire or collapse. But the same power may be extended to a general exclusion from residential districts of all industrial establishments, though some may not be dangerous or offensive, for the inclusion of a reasonable margin to ensure effective enforcement will not put upon a law otherwise valid the stamp of invalidity. This does not mean that zoning or rezonings are not possible. So with that in mind, let's turn to the matter of Heroes Bridge. No one questions Hero Bridge's noble mission, nor its generous aim to provide a home to veterans who have come on hard times, nor should anyone question my own sentiments in this regard. While I was serving as a lieutenant in the U.S. Navy aboard a Gearing-class destroyer in the Atlantic and Mediterranean from 1968 to 71, my identical twin brother, after exposure to Agent Orange, was flown from the Bonhomme Richard off the coast of Vietnam with rare liver disease. He subsequently endured 3 liver transplants. In 1995, I donated a kidney so he wouldn't have to be changed to a dialysis machine. He paid the ultimate price when he died 13 years ago. The issue here, as I see it, is not what Hero Bridge is, but where it is. And I'm not making an assessment now as to whether that's appropriate or not. What I am saying is it may be upon review perfectly appropriate, but I urge my fellow council members to await the review. This project appears to be a complicated application, calling for the rezoning of a medium-density residential district into a residential plan unit development. It may turn out that that is not the way the application is proposed. It would turn an R15 zone into something it is not, and whether we think this is a good idea or not, we should give it the due diligence and careful inquiry the applicant and our citizens deserve. Thus, I believe any expression of support by this body or its members at this point for this application, especially publicly, is premature. We would otherwise appear to be endorsing an application simply because of its mission, which might later be construed as arbitrary or capricious. I will point out that arbitrary and capricious actions are ill-advised and may be ruled to be invalid. So I stress that we should take this one step at a time, have it go before the Planning Commission, review its merits, and then decide upon those. I think the public debate just exacerbates an unnecessary and, I said, unfortunate dispute where everybody has a certain right to be able to make their voices heard. So thank you, as I said at the outset, and thank you for the 5 minutes. I'm glad to be back.